Long before the first lines of cuneiform were pressed into clay, human history was already ancient. By 100,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans were not emerging. They were already here, walking, thinking, adapting, and spreading across diverse and often unforgiving landscapes. This chapter begins in Africa, the only continent with continuous evidence of human occupation across this entire span of time. Fossil remains and genetic data confirm that Homo sapiens had achieved their modern anatomy well before the appearance of agriculture, metallurgy, or writing. What followed was not stagnation, but expansion. A slow, complex process of movement, environmental negotiation, and cultural adaptation. Archaeological sites such as Jebel Irhoud in Morocco and Omo Kibish in Ethiopia place early modern humans deep in the Middle Pleistocene. These populations were already using stone tools with refined techniques, controlling fire, and exploiting a wide range of ecological niches. Coastal zones, savannas, forests, and semi-arid regions were all occupied, not simultaneously, but progressively, as climates shifted and opportunities emerged. Between roughly 100,000 and 60,000 years ago, climatic instability dominated much of the planet. Ice sheets expanded and retreated. Deserts fluctuated between barriers and corridors. During these oscillations, human groups remained small, mobile, and highly flexible. There is no evidence of centralized authority, permanent architecture, or social stratification. Survival depended on knowledge, cooperation, and the ability to respond quickly to environmental change. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to Primal Roots. From Africa, dispersal unfolded in multiple phases. Genetic evidence shows that a major expansion occurred around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, carrying human populations into the Levant, South Asia, and eventually into Europe, East Asia, and Australia. These were not sudden invasions. They were gradual movements, often following coastlines, river systems, and seasonal resources. Each new region demanded adaptation. In colder latitudes, clothing technology and shelter construction became essential. In tropical forests, navigation, plant knowledge, and hunting strategies evolved. Toolkits diversified. Stone blades, bone points, and composite tools appeared independently in different regions, indicating innovation rather than diffusion alone. Crucially, this entire period unfolded without writing. No chronicles recorded migrations, no kings listed conquests. What remains is material evidence, fragmentary but consistent. Hearths, cut-marked bones, pigment use, and spatial organization at campsites reveal structured behavior and long-term planning. Symbolic expression also predates civilization by tens of thousands of years. Engraved ochre from Blombos Cave, shell beads from North Africa and the Levant, and early figurative art in Eurasia point to abstract thinking and social communication. These behaviors are not anomalies. They appear repeatedly, across vast distances and time spans. The absence of cities does not indicate the absence of culture. It reflects a different mode of existence, one optimized for resilience rather than accumulation. Mobility reduced risk. Knowledge was stored in people, not in monuments. Memory, oral transmission, and shared practice formed the foundation of social continuity. By the end of this chapter, one conclusion is unavoidable. The so-called gap before civilization is not a void. It is the longest and most formative chapter of human history, written not in text, but in stone, bone, and landscape. And it is here, in this deep prehistoric world, that the roots of all later human societies are found. As modern humans expanded across continents, geography ceased to be a backdrop and became an active force shaping behavior, biology, and culture. Location dictated survival strategies. climate imposed limits. Adaptation became the defining trait of Homo sapiens long before the appearance of cities or states. Between roughly 70,000 and 12,000 years ago, human populations occupied nearly every major biome on Earth. From Arctic tundra to tropical coastlines, from high-altitude plateaus to dense rainforests, each environment demanded specific responses. These responses were not instinctive alone. They were learned, transmitted, and refined over generations. Paleoclimatic data show that this period was dominated by rapid environmental fluctuation. The last glacial cycle brought repeated shifts in temperature, precipitation, and sea level. Ice sheets advanced across northern latitudes, while arid zones expanded and contracted elsewhere. For mobile hunter-gatherer groups, stability was rare, flexibility was essential. Archaeological evidence indicates that humans adjusted settlement patterns in direct response to these changes. During colder, drier phases, populations clustered around ecological refugia, regions where water, plant life, and game remained available. During warmer intervals, expansion resumed, opening new corridors of movement across Eurasia and beyond. Adaptation was not limited to movement. Technology evolved in parallel with environment. In temperate and cold regions, tailored clothing, likely made from animal hides and sinew, became a biological necessity. The development of eyed needles, documented at Upper Paleolithic sites in Siberia, marks a critical technological threshold. Thermal regulation, once purely physiological, became cultural. In coastal zones, especially in southern Africa and Southeast Asia, marine resources transformed subsistence strategies. Shell middens, fish remains, and specialized tools demonstrate systematic exploitation of the sea. This shift reduced dependence on large terrestrial game and allowed denser, more stable populations to form, even without agriculture. Dietary flexibility played a central role. Stable isotope analysis of human remains reveals highly variable food strategies, including meat-heavy diets in Ice Age Europe and mixed plant-animal diets in tropical regions. This nutritional plasticity supported brain energetics and reproductive success across diverse conditions. Social organization adapted as well. Ethnographic analogy, combined with archaeological spatial analysis, suggests that group size, mobility range, and social networks varied according to resource distribution. In unpredictable environments, wider social connections increased resilience, facilitating information exchange, mate selection, and access to distant resources. Symbolic behavior intensified during this period, not as an artistic luxury, but as a social technology. Ornamentation, body pigments, and portable art functioned as markers of identity and affiliation. These signals helped regulate interaction between groups, reducing conflict and enabling cooperation in overlapping territories. Crucially, none of this required centralized leadership or permanent infrastructure. Complexity emerged horizontally through shared knowledge and cumulative culture. Innovation was incremental, often invisible archaeologically, yet profoundly effective. Genetic research reinforces this picture. Studies led by Svante Pääbo and the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology demonstrate repeated population bottlenecks and expansions tightly linked to climate stress and opportunity. Rather than linear progress, human history during this era resembles a braided stream, diverging and converging across time and space. Adaptation also involved interaction with other human species. In Eurasia, modern humans encountered Neanderthals and Denisovans. Genomic evidence confirms limited interbreeding with adaptive gene variants, particularly those related to immunity and high-altitude tolerance, persisting in modern populations. These exchanges were rare, but biologically significant. The archaeological record does not support narratives of rapid replacement or constant conflict. Instead, it points to prolonged periods of coexistence, followed by demographic shifts driven more by climate and population dynamics than by technological superiority alone. Throughout this vast time span, humans remained non-agricultural, non-literate, and non-urban. Yet their capacity to reshape behavior in response to local conditions laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Sedentism, farming, and social stratification did not emerge from ignorance, but from deep familiarity with landscapes and resources. By the end of the last ice age, around 11,700 years ago, human populations had already mastered mobility, cooperation, symbolic communication, and environmental management. What changed next was not intelligence but context. A warming planet altered ecological equations, making long-term settlement viable in select regions. This chapter reveals a fundamental truth supported by decades of interdisciplinary research, including syntheses by archaeologist Brian Fagan and climate historian Peter Bellwood. Civilization did not arise from a sudden leap forward. It emerged from tens of thousands of years of localized adaptation, refined through survival. Humanity's deepest strength was never domination. It was adjustment. And in that capacity to adapt, quietly and persistently, the blueprint of civilization was already written, long before the first word was ever recorded. As the planet emerged from the last ice age, human history entered a phase of transformation that would permanently alter its trajectory. Around 11,700 years ago, global temperatures began to stabilize. Ice sheets retreated, sea levels rose, ecosystems reorganized. For the first time in tens of thousands of years, environmental conditions remained relatively predictable across multiple generations. This climatic shift did not create intelligence or innovation. Those capacities already existed. What it created was opportunity. In certain regions, predictable rainfall, fertile soils, and seasonal cycles aligned in ways that favored long-term settlement. Location became destiny, not through inevitability, but through ecological probability. In the Fertile Crescent, stretching from the Levant through Mesopotamia, wild stands of wheat and barley thrived alongside easily domesticated animals. Similar processes unfolded independently in the Yellow and Yangtze River basins, in Mesoamerica, in the Andes, and in New Guinea. Agriculture was not a single invention. It was a repeated experiment, emerging wherever environmental thresholds were crossed. Early cultivation did not immediately produce abundance. Archaeological and bioanthropological evidence indicates that the first farming populations experienced nutritional stress, increased disease load, and higher labor demands. Skeletons from early Neolithic sites show reduced stature and greater signs of physiological strain compared to their foraging predecessors. Yet agriculture offered something unprecedented. It anchored people to place. Sedentism allowed for population growth, resource accumulation, and long-term modification of landscapes. Forests were cleared, fields were managed, water was controlled. Human environments became increasingly artificial, shaped as much by intention as by climate. With permanence came density. Villages expanded, social relationships grew more complex. Mechanisms for cooperation, coordination, and conflict resolution became necessary. Kinship networks widened. Property concepts emerged gradually, tied to land, storage, and labor investment. This process unfolded over millennia, not centuries. There was no singular moment when humanity crossed from prehistory into history. Instead, layers of change accumulated slowly but irreversibly. Architecture became more durable, tool production more specialized. Exchange networks expanded, moving obsidian, shells, and other materials across vast distances. Writing, when it finally appeared around 3200 BCE in southern Mesopotamia, was not designed to record myths or philosophy. It was an administrative technology. Early cuneiform tablets tracked grain, livestock, labor, and taxation. Writing emerged not from abstract curiosity, but from economic pressure. This fact reshapes how the so-called 100,000-year gap is understood. The absence of writing before civilization does not signal absence of complexity. It signals absence of bureaucracy. For most of human existence, memory, tradition, and oral transmission were sufficient to sustain social systems. The archaeological record confirms that cognitive capacity did not suddenly increase with farming or cities. Brain size had stabilized tens of thousands of years earlier. Symbolic thought, planning depth, and technological creativity were already present. What changed was scale. Scale amplified consequences. Surpluses enabled inequality. Permanent settlements intensified disease transmission. Hierarchies hardened. Power centralized. Writing made these structures durable, visible, and historically legible. From this point forward, history becomes increasingly biased toward societies that recorded themselves. Civilizations without writing fade faster from view, regardless of their sophistication. The deep past, by contrast, resists narration because it was never meant to be written. Modern genetic and archaeological research continues to refine this picture. Patterns of migration, adaptation, and interaction reveal continuity rather than rupture. The people who built the first cities were not different humans. They were descendants of foragers who had mastered adaptation long before walls were raised. The final irony of this long silence is that it shaped humanity more profoundly than the brief span of recorded history that followed. Language, cooperation, empathy, and environmental intelligence were forged without texts, laws, or monuments. Civilization did not invent humanity. Humanity invented civilization, slowly, unevenly, and only when conditions allowed. Understanding this reframes the past. The long prehistoric world was not waiting for history to begin. It was history, lived at a scale that rarely leaves names behind. And in recognizing that, the 100,000-year gap closes, not with speculation, but with evidence, continuity, and context. If this deep history changed how you see civilization, subscribe for more evidence-based explorations of human origins, adaptation, and the science behind our past.